But hi, everyone, and Enon, thank you for that kind introduction. I would like to start by saying that no, your eyes, your ears do not deceive you. There's no PhD behind that name. Yet, I've had the unique privilege of getting to lead a research group with the Med13L Family Foundation on caregiver-reported data, meaning that for the past year, year and a half, you guys have been sending in all your data through surveys on top of surveys on top of surveys. And without even realizing it, you've been trusting me to look over data on your children's conditions and analyze it. And I thought it's only fair that I go ahead and share the insights that we've gained over the past years back with you guys. First, I want to go ahead and ask a very, very straightforward question to you guys, and that is, what is Med13L syndrome? And not all at once. I'll go ahead and fill in the gaps because I think you guys already have to sleep. But from the caregiver's perspective, from the brothers, the sisters, the mothers, the fathers, the aunts, the uncles, and the grandparents, Med13L syndrome is life. It's the day-to-day. And it's what makes your little bundles of joy your little bundles of joy. From the geneticists and hardcore molecular biologists we have sitting up here, Med13L syndrome is a mutation in the Med13L gene, which plays a crucial role in the mediator complex involved in gene regulation. And for the clinicians, for the physicians in the room, Med13L syndrome is a neurodevelopmental disorder marked with intellectual disability, motor delay, physical impairment, some speech delay, and some more or less conserved facial features. Yet those last two perspectives are kind of well represented in the literature. All things considered, it's rare brain disease. We only have 100 papers, but they're decently well represented, not so much the first. And that's where our group came in, and Rachel and Katie, and they sent out tons and tons of surveys to all of you guys just so that we could kind of get a slice into your life on what Med13L syndrome really looks like in the day-to-day. So our goals were really threefold. We wanted to first expand the clinical phenotype, meaning that we wanted to not only increase the amount of patients represented in the literature with Med13L syndrome, but we also wanted to consider things that maybe weren't previously considered under the Med13L syndrome umbrella. We wanted to expand what we considered as Med13L syndrome. We wanted to show your perspective in that, the caregiver's perspective, the people affected most, right? We love having big egos as scientists, but the truth is, you guys know more about Med13L syndrome than we do. You guys are the ones that deal with it on the day-to-day. I don't. And there's so much that we can learn from that, from you guys. And of course, we wanted then to sort of compare what you guys' perspective was versus what the literature already says. Because I think there's a lot of value to be gained from what are the differences and why do they exist, more importantly. So before I actually get into the data or anything on my research, I want to go ahead and position ourselves within the context of the literature. Now, I did this literature search December 2nd of last year, and essentially I just plugged into PubMed Med13L, and I took down every single paper that had one patient represented with Med13L syndrome or more. And as you can see, we have 160 patients represented by December 2nd of last year in the literature. And thanks to you guys, boom, we now have 218. So all the surveys that you guys have been filling out, we got 58 we got more than 58 responses. Yeah, guys, come on, come on. That's you guys. Yeah, and we now have 218. So, of course, thank you guys. You're all the super secret rock stars behind the scenes. I just get to stand up here and take the credit, which I don't mind. But here we are, a podium finish right off the bat just because of you guys. So let's go ahead and talk about the research, because I've been kind of intentionally vague up to this point. So like I mentioned, our two superstars, Rachel and Katie, sent out dozens and dozens of surveys. And Vanessa. Apologies, Vanessa. So our trio of superstars sent out tons of surveys last March, and over the course of the year, through constant engagement, social media posts, community outreach events, we got tons of responses. By March of this year, we said, okay, I think this is enough. We have a really golden data set on our hands. Let's turn it into something amazing. And by March 2025, we finished our data collection. 60 different surveys were completed. 108 distinct patients or caregivers had completed these surveys, and 58 of whom had a confirmed Med13L variant. That comprised our N equals 58 for this study. Now, over the next 2 months, I went ahead and took all the surveys, right? There were about somewhere between 2,000 to 3,000 to 4,000. On the car ride over, I was trying to think how many surveys were there. I was trying to do the math, but I really couldn't put a number on it. somewhere between 2,000 to 4,000 surveys you guys completed in total, which is huge. But they were all yes or no questions, or questions on a scale of 1 to 5. So I took those and I kind of quantified them in ways that I could objectively compare with stuff that was already in the literature. For example, I'll give you an example because it seems kind of abstract. A survey question could have been, does your child hit other children, right? And a yes, I would see that and I would put a little tick mark for aggression, right? I just kind of quantified or categorized things in categories that I think made sense. My team would agree, but I don't know. I now stand in front of you guys with all this data done. We're now on the eve of a publication, and we thought it would be just right to share the results with you guys first. So let's go ahead and talk about this data that I've kind of been dancing around this whole time. So of course, MED13L syndrome is a genetic disorder, and we have to go over the genetic data first. So we had 54 total variants, 34 of which were novel, meaning not reported anywhere thus far in the literature. That right there is a huge contribution, even though it wasn't our main intention. We also have some structural variants mapped there, but I think they're better represented here on this figure. I don't know if our genetic counselor, Liana, is in the room with us, but one of our team members, Liana Cole, actually mapped this out. And I don't think any of you can see any of the actual variants that are written up there, but this is just a sneak peek for what's in our paper. As you can see, tons of different variants, and she denoted the novel ones. Let me see, do I have a pointer? She denoted the novel ones with an asterisk and variants of uncertain significance, or the VUSs, with parentheses. But let's get into the real meat and the bones now, the phenotype. So for all of you that might be a little bit less nerdy than I am, the phenotype just refers to all the physical aspects of anything that's genetically related, right? So it's height, face, it includes stuff such as behavior, intelligence, right? The phenotypic data is really what we were mainly concerned with. Here are just some of the main domains of what we saw versus what the literature represented. And again, keep in mind, all of this is from your data that I just kind of categorized. But the stuff in green there is things I'm not really too concerned with difference-wise, right? Very small differences, most likely just due to randomness or small things here and there, nothing really worth writing home about, right? Speech language impairment and ASD and autistic features, relatively very similar levels, right? The yellow, the orange is slightly more different, but again, nothing that I think is extremely significant. Seizures, epilepsy, intellectual disability, and muscular abnormalities, levels were very similar to what we'd expect from the literature. But the red is really what I'm here to talk about, because we see a huge difference from what is present in the literature. 98, I keep on pointing, my shadow's getting to the screen, but I don't have a pointer, but 98% of the literature reported head, face, neck dysmorphisms, whereas we found that only 58% of you guys reported head, face, neck dysmorphisms. Now, I, for one, hate that term, because dysmorphism sound, So I'm going to refer to, oh, thank you, Rachel. Where would we be without Rachel? But recognizable facial features, right? 58% of you versus 98% of the people in the literature. And then you got to ask why. Why such an alarming discrepancy? Why such a big discrepancy? You got to ask about what does the literature see that maybe we don't see, or vice versa. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little exercise to kind of give you why I think this is happening. So I want everyone to close their eyes here. Just close your eyes. I promise I will not touch your wallets, okay? So I'm going to read a description of a patient published in the literature, and then I'm going to show you their picture afterwards. I want to see how far off you guys are in your visualization, okay? So everyone's eyes are closed. It's patient number 1. Don't open until I tell you. So we got high forehead bitemporal narrowing, horizontal eyebrows, upslanting palpebral fissures, a bulbous nasal tip, deep philtrum, epicanthus, cupid bow upper lip, and prognathism. Now, if half those words didn't mean anything, also, don't worry, they didn't to me a few months ago. But just get a mental picture, okay? We're gonna open 3, 2, 1, and here's our adorable little girl. She's 3 years old, probably the cutest thing I've ever seen, and if I were her mother, her father, or the caregiver filling out this data, when I see a question, does your child have facial dysmorphisms, I would say, heck to the no. She's adorable, I love her. And I think that's why we see such a lower level of reporting, and I think this is really significant, right? We could do, I was preparing to do it again because I expected some of you guys to cheat, but for the most part, all of your eyes were closed. But again, we see a description that just does not match anything of what we would expect, right? This guy's awesome. Like, again, a question comes, facial dysmorphism? No, right? And of course, one more thing I want to mention is that you guys, of course, this is caregiver reported data, so we also have to consider you guys might not have access to CT scans or the same stuff that we would in a clinical setting. But I think that the main difference, the main biases here from the fact that these are your children shows us that what you guys care about isn't exactly aligned with what the physicians and the clinicians and the traditional clinical perspective do care about, right? 98% of them would say, no, facial features, that's a huge deal. Whereas only about 50% of you guys say that's anything to consider at all. Now, I can understand, and I do understand, why facial features are such a big deal for physicians, right? Because when you look at someone, it's a lot easier to sort of come up with a concrete concept of something when you can look at someone's face and say, yeah, that's about right. But I think that's not what we need to focus on. I think what's far more important is the stuff that you guys are seeing that maybe the literature isn't quite capturing. So I want to focus on these top three. Oh, I keep forgetting I have a pointer. I want to focus on these top three here. Because again, they're really alarming discrepancies. So chronic sleep issues, that one in purple right there. I told you I went over 160 cases in the literature. Four on one hand, mentioned sleep issues. You guys, 60% of you said sleep issues. That is something insane, a huge discrepancy. And the fact that that's not being represented in the literature is really alarming. Behavioral abnormalities, dysphagia, feeding difficulties, again, almost 2 to 3 to 3.5 fold differences in what you guys are reporting versus what the literature traditionally says. And these are really alarming differences because when you guys or when anyone with any rare brain disorder goes, or any rare disorder in general, goes to a physician, the physician's not going to know much, right? They're going to have to read it. So they're going to go behind your back, they're going to pretend like I know everything, but they're going to go over here, go to PubMed, and they're going to maybe look at 3-4 articles. If the articles they're looking at say, oh no, four out of the 160 say sleep issues, 23% have feeding difficulties, and 29% have behavioral abnormalities, suddenly you become a lot more isolated. Why does no one else with this MED13L syndrome have what my child's going through? And I think this is really the grave importance of caregiver-provided data right here. So we went ahead, of course, we didn't just leave it at that. I wanted to go ahead and find what parts of behavior were really standing out the most. We found that impulsivity and short attention span were reported in the highest levels, both above 50%. Again, something that we really need to consider, I feel, as part of the syndromic phenotype. We also went ahead and conducted a Vinland study, which is a huge set of surveys for about half of you guys that have probably taken it in the room. We had 22 responses. Actually, one of the speakers earlier today, Mitchell, I don't see her in here either. She was the first one to do it. She beat us to it. But our results really closely aligned to hers in that we have communication scores at the bottom. We have daily living skills right here. We have socialization, and we have motor skills right here. And as you can see, in both her study and ours, hers is the green bar, ours is the blue, both are lower than what the standard score of 100 is, and that's what we should expect. So there's something going on in each of these domains as well, and that really needs to be better represented as well. Now, we also did equality. We did a ton, by the way. I'm sparing like 90% of the data. If you want the full rundown, you go to our paper, Frontiers in Neurology. It's on the verge of publication. But we also did a quality of life inventory disability, and the results matched everything that we were seeing prior to this point. Is that, yes, behavior, emotionality, these are the things that are being affected. Now, I want to finish up by asking the question of where do we go from here? Because it's a seemingly like, okay, this is great data, but what do we do now? So, of course, there's the obvious. We need to address behavior and emotionality in clinic. We can't just ignore that that's part of the syndromic phenotype because it's very real. Our data has proven a very real element indeed exists right here. As researchers, though, I think we should also strive to continue to show other dimensions, right? We basically administered thousands of surveys over the course of a year to sort of track each and every part of your life that we could, like sleep, feeding, toiletry, but what were we missing? What else is going on that maybe the literature doesn't well represent, that we really, really need to get in the shoes of the caregiver? And so with that, I want to just leave you guys with an answer to my initial question I asked in the beginning of what is MED13L syndrome? And if you couldn't quite tell by the presentation, it's a whole lot of we don't know. You guys know better than us, And the data is all with you guys. And I think that the clinical community, the medical community, the scientific community needs to do a better job of getting in your shoes sometimes. And I think that's where we're planning on going. So thank you everyone for first filling out all the surveys, and thank you for your attention. Thank you.